Welcome back to the Twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hanson to look back on Arcangelo's winning the Travers Stakes and other performances that impressed us this weekend. It's good to be back on the roundtable with you all, James and Vance, and let's talk about the main event from the weekend, the Travers Stakes. What were your takeaways from this race? We'll start with Vance.
Well, going into the Travers, I thought it was kind of a two-horse race between Arcangelo and Forte, and to decide who was the pro tem leader of the three-year-old male division. And Arcangelo certainly proved he is number one with a very impressive victory. Forte, I thought, ran below par there. I expect him to bounce back from this effort better next time wherever he shows up. But Arcangelo now has won the Peter Pan, the Belmont, and the Travers, clearly the top three-year-old, and I suspect he will be training up to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Jenna Antonucci loves giving this horse time between races, and I think his current pattern, work pattern, and race pattern fits perfectly into when the Breeders' Cup Classic at Santa Anita will be run. So Arcangelo, very impressive. Of course, Disarm ran a very good race himself coming up the inside. Really only the major threat to Arcangelo in that race from behind. But the rest of them, Mage ran last. Unfortunately, the Kentucky Derby winner, National Treasure, didn't show up. So really, I think this is Arcangelo's division to lose. We do have Go Rocket Ride coming up in the Pacific Classic, but Arcangelo clearly on top of this division after the Travers. How about you, James?
Yeah, I agree with Arcangelo being clearly on top. The Belmont and the Travers gets him a little bit of a cushion. Even if Go Rocket Rod wins Pacific Classic, he's still got to get another win, and probably the Breeders' Cup Classic to wrest it away from Arcangelo, I would think. I came away very impressed, and it's just that turn of foot that Arcangelo possesses that really I wows me. I think we saw it in the Belmont Stakes, but because he had that inside trip and most of his rivals were wide, people were a little bit dubious. But we saw it again on Saturday at the top of the stretch when Javier Castellano asked Arcangelo to go. He had just exploded away to like by 3-length lead. He's got this turn of foot. And the thing about Arcangelo really to me is he just seems to be getting better. I see a lot of correlation between his sire, Arrogate, and him, where Arrogate came along in the late summer of his 3-year-old season and carried it forward and, continued to run better after the Travers. Arcangelo came along a couple months earlier in the Belmont, but he's just like hitting his best stride right now. And Arrogate ran so big with time between races. He went from the Travers to the Breeders' Cup Classic, beat California Chrome, won the Classic. Then he had almost 3 weeks to the Pegasus. And I think that short gap between the Pegasus and Dubai World Cup may have messed him up. But right now, Arcangelo is thriving with this time between races. I see no reason why he won't continue to run well in the Breeders' Cup Classic this fall at Santa Anita. He's won 4 in a row. 3 of them have come at different tracks, so he's taken his track with him. And I thought the runner-up Disarm ran really well, too. He's another colt, just has the potential to keep getting better. So I came away from the Travers thinking that Arcangelo and Disarm are 2 of your top contenders for the Breeders' Cup Classic. They're going to take some beating this fall, and especially Arcangelo. He's the leader, Ashley.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Arcangelo's connections and specifically Jenna Antonucci. Got to give her flowers, as the kids say. She became the second woman to win the Travers. The other was Mary Hirsch all the way back in 1938 with Thanksgiving. And Jenna Antonucci, of course, became the first woman to train a Triple Crown winner with Arcangelo in the Belmont. The fact that she was able to bring him back off 11 weeks of rest and win, also very impressive, proves she's not just a great female trainer, but a great trainer in general. And Javier Castellano also earned his record extending 7th Travers win. He compared it to the Super Bowl and Tom Brady. James, I was going to have to throw out a Tom Brady reference if I had the chance.
Of course. Absolutely. I would expect nothing less, Ashley.
So obviously very impressive performances there. I'm curious though, with Mage, obviously a lot of hype coming into this race. What did you all make of his performance, and do you have any explanation for it? James, what do you think?
I thought it was really disheartening. I have no explanation. I expected him to run well. I thought he had, I thought he was going to run second going into the race, and I just don't know what they do. I guess they're going to still point for the Breeders' Cup Classic, but that's a tough race that seemingly to bounce back from. I think it's unfortunate he ran so well in the Derby like he did, but he hasn't won again since then. And they haven't announced any stud plans, but I hope he comes back next year and runs it at 4. I'd still like to see him, get some more big wins on his resume, but he's running out of time this year. What do you think, Vance, about Mage?
Yeah, in here last week, I mentioned what a negative key prep the Haskell is, and that kind of prove the point again in the Travers. And yeah, it's hard to explain why Mage ran so poorly on Saturday. Certainly not the worst horse in the race by any stretch of the imagination. So, but I think it's time probably now for them to call it a season, perhaps regroup. Maybe run once or twice more, find a more reasonable spot. But as far as championship implications, I just find it difficult that he can reverse the form against Arcangelo and Forte in the Breeders' Cup Classic or against any of the older horses. Yeah, like you, I would like to see Mage run again next year, and a more seasoned, more polished 4-year-old, I think, could probably do better things.
And real quick, before we move on, Tapit Trice added blinkers, just like Disarm, came in third, but of course had a slow start again. Is this horse ever going to break out of the gate well?
Maybe next year. I don't, not this year though. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think some people on Twitter were saying, hey, this horse could probably use a race like the Melbourne Cup, 2 miles long or something like that. So I don't know. He is kind of who he is at this point.
All right. Well, there were other impressive performances this weekend. Who stood out to you all? We'll start with James.
I'll mention Echo Zulu, and to me, she was so impressive winning her 3rd straight race this year. She's clearly improved from age 3 when she ran second in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint to age 4. In fact, she's earning Brisnet speed ratings on par with Beholder and some of the top Filly Mare horses of the last 25 years. And I think she's special. I think it's unfortunate. I'd like to point this out, that she's has common ownership with Gunite. I mean, it's great for the owners of those horses, but it looks like Gunite's going to aim for the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and Echo Zulu might be relegated to the Filly Mare Sprint because that would give them an opportunity to win 2 titles. But as special as I think Echo Zulu is, Ashley, I think she should be running in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I think that's a race where a filly of her talents belongs, because I think she'd be favored in there and she'd be the horse to beat. Who impressed you, Vance?
Yeah, you pretty much reiterated all the points that I was going to make about Echo Zulu. Just demolished that field in very good time and ran much faster than the males did in the forego earlier in the card. So yeah, she's clearly taken hold of the female sprint division away from Goodnight Olive at the moment. And so a rematch between them in the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita looks like to be in the offering because, like you said, the connections have Goodnight for the sprint. But I agree, she would fit so much better, I think, against the males in the sprint. She's clearly as fast, if not faster, than the top male sprinters in the country right now, and she would be such a strong fit. So, yeah, Echo Zulu for me was one of the standout performances of the weekend. How about you, Ashley?
Well, I wanted to talk about a 2-year-old colt who raced on Friday at Saratoga, Fierceness, who won his debut by 11 1/4 lengths and 109.56 and a 6 furlong maiden special weight. He's a 2-year-old City of Light colt who City of Light won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and trained by Todd Pletcher, a 3-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. This horse is owned and bred by Mike Repole, and Fierceness earned a 101 Brisnet speed rating on debut, one of the highest speed figures of any 2-year-old this year, and I believe the highest of any debut runner. We had Prince of Monaco earn a 102 in his 2nd career start, and Brightwork of Philly earned a 101 in her 3rd career start. But Fierceness came out and did this on debut, drew comparisons to Uncle Mo, also trained by Todd Pletcher for Repole Stables, and Uncle Mo won his debut on Travers Day by 14 1/4 lengths and went on to win the Champagne, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and 2-year-old colt. Fierceness, of course, was a heavy favorite in this maiden special weight, so that wasn't a surprise that he won. But the way he won in complete dominant fashion maybe was a surprise. He set fast fractions over a muddy track, and he's pointed toward the Champagne, a Breeders' Cup winning year in event 4, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and also a Road to the Kentucky Derby qualifier. So certainly a horse to keep an eye on going forward. Maybe we'll see him in the Derby next year. And based off of his performance on Friday, I think, could have a contender here. So, well, we talked about horses that impressed us, but a couple, fell short, including Forte, Nest. I was curious, which of the horses this weekend that didn't reach the winner's circle do you think will rebound from their loss? Vance?
Well, we talked about Gunite earlier winning the Forego over Elite Power. That was his first win over Elite Power in 3 meetings. But I think Elite Power is the horse to take out of that race because the next time those 2 horses will meet will be in the Breeders' Cup Sprint at Santa Anita, and that's over 6 furlongs. Trainer Steve Asmussen said after the Forego that 7 furlongs, the distance of the Forego, really hits Gunite between the eyes probably a lot better than 6 furlong does. And so Elite Power, I think, is probably the male horse anyway, if Echo Zulu doesn't show up. But Elite Power, I think, is the horse to fear going into the Breeders' Cup Sprint at Santa Anita, going 6 furlongs, cutting back to that distance. Elite Power is expected to train up to that race. It sounds like Gunite might have an additional prep in between. So Elite Power will be fresher. He won the race before at Keeneland last fall. He's got an impeccable record, one of the better sprinters I think we've had over the last decade or 2. So Elite Power for me is the bounce back candidate at the Breeders' Cup. James?
I'm going to go with Disarm. I've been beating this drum for weeks, maybe over a month, but I think the 3-year-olds are going to play a major role in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. I think Arcangelo is a horse to beat right now in the Classic picture, and I thought Disarm really ran a big race for second. You watch that replay. He throws a little bit of a scare into Arcangelo in mid-stretch. The winner had more in reserve and was able to hold him off, but that was a big effort. Disarm recorded his first stakes win in mid-June. He's now earned triple-digit Brisnet speed ratings in 3 consecutive starts, and things are only going to get bigger and better for him. So he's right now tentatively pointing for the Pennsylvania Derby on September 23rd. I think he'll be the horse to beat it in there if he runs there. If Asmussen wants an extra week, he can go to Woodward. Might even be an easier field against older horses there. And I just think he's got a shot to run really well this fall in the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. And I'll mention real quick the Pacific Classics this weekend. You got Go Rocket Rod, Arabian Night, Skinner. All 3 of those horses are Breeders' Cup Classic contenders in my eyes as well. I'm keen on the 3-year-olds this year, Ashley.
Well, I'm going to go with Nest in the personal ensign. She finished 3rd to Idiomatic, who gave a very impressive performance gate to wire, but Nest suffered her first defeat at Saratoga. She'll likely get a rematch with Idiomatic in the Spinster at Keeneland, and this is a track where Nest won by more than 8 lengths in the Ashland last year. Todd Pletcher said that the sloppy track maybe hampered Nest and said, the one thing is she seemed like she didn't get that acceleration at the top of the stretch. Usually she has that ability to quicken on the surface, and she couldn't do that. So I think on a fast track, we'll see her rebound. And obviously the Breeders' Cup Distaff will be at Santa Anita, where it's very unlikely we'll get a sloppy track. I mean, I can't speak for the weather. It's kind of weird in California right now, but I think we will see Nest bounce back. What do you all think about Idiomatic, though? Do you think this horse is one that we should be looking out for in the Breeders' Cup?
Yeah, I mean, she proved herself in the personal ensign that she's probably near the top of the division, along with Nest and Clairiere. But the sloppy track I think played an impact for sure in that race. Nest and Clairiere certainly didn't have to snuff there, and Idiomatic took advantage, went wire to wire. So I do want to see one other performance out of Idiomatic before I lean in her direction for the Breeders' Cup.
I'm bullish on her. I think she became a serious Breeders' Cup Distaff contender with that performance. The thing about her Delaware handicap, anybody that sees that on paper and didn't watch the race, doesn't know the story. She stumbled out of the gate, was dead last, ran a huge race that day, has continued to move forward off that effort on Saturday or on Friday. And I think that I think she and Ness are essentially the top two distaff contenders for me. I've got some concern about Clairiere off of that effort on Friday, Ashley.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. You can catch us next week as we recap a number of stakes races on the Roundtable next week as well. And then we have our best bets and fades of the weekend with our jury on Thursday. And check out a number of promos at twinspires.com or on the TwinSpires app to help you win big at the races this weekend too. We'll see you next time.